Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he descended deeper into the abandoned mining facility on Kepler 442b. The emergency beacon had been broadcasting for 3 days now, and as the nearest human settlement's chief engineer, he was the obvious choice for the rescue mission. What puzzled him was the nature of the distress call. It wasn't asking for medical aid or evacuation. It was requesting tools, specifically plasma cutters, molecular welders, and heavy-duty restraint breakers. The facility stretched endlessly into the planet's crust, a testament to the Zeltharian Empire's industrial might before their mysterious disappearance 50 years ago. Humans had inherited dozens of these sites across the galaxy, most stripped bare of anything valuable. This one had been marked as fully depleted and sealed, which made the beacon's activation all the more strange. Marcus's boots clanged against the metal grating as he made his way through the primary shaft. His helmet's lights cut through the darkness, revealing walls covered in that distinctive Zeltharian script that looked like frozen lightning. The air recyclers hummed softly, indicating someone had recently activated the life support systems. Someone was definitely down here. The beacon's signal grew stronger as he descended to sub-level 7. According to his scanner, the facility went down at least 20 more levels, but the signal was coming from just ahead. Marcus paused at a massive blast door that had been forced open, its edges still glowing from recent cutting. Someone had used industrial-grade equipment to get through, and recently, beyond the door lay a corridor that made Marcus's breath catch. The walls were lined with what looked like holding cells, each one designed for something much larger than a human. The bars were as thick as his arm and made from some kind of energy-resistant alloy. Most of the cells stood empty, their doors hanging open like broken teeth. But at the far end of the corridor, a faint blue light pulsed rhythmically. As Marcus approached, he began to hear it. A sound that was part whistle, part harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate in his bones. It was hauntingly beautiful and undeniably alien. The sound was coming from the last cell, the only one that remained sealed. Marcus rounded the corner and froze. Inside the cell, coiled in the center of the space, was a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. It resembled the dragons from ancient human mythology, but this was no fantasy creature. Its scales were pure white, almost translucent, and they seemed to shimmer with an inner light that pulsed in rhythm with its labored breathing. The creature was massive, easily 30 feet from snout to tail, but it was clearly weakened. Heavy chains made from the same alloy as the cell bars wrapped around the creature's limbs and neck. Where the chains touched its scales, the white had turned a sickly gray, and Marcus could see that the metal was somehow draining the creature's energy. The dragon's eyes, large, intelligent, and a startling shade of violet, fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made him take a step back. The creature's mouth opened slightly, and that harmonic sound emerged again. But this time Marcus realized it wasn't just a sound. His universal translator, designed to handle most known languages, flickered to life. Human. The voice was weak but unmistakably filled with desperate hope. You received my call." Marcus stared in shock. "You sent the beacon signal? You're the one requesting tools?" The dragon's great head nodded slowly. "I am Kirithvan of the Draconic Ascendancy. I have been imprisoned here for 53 of your years. The chains..." The creature's voice faltered, and Marcus could see the pain in those violet eyes. "They are slowly killing me. I managed to activate an old beacon, hoping someone would come. I need the tools to break free." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. This creature had been chained in this cell for over 50 years, slowly dying while the galaxy moved on above. The Zeltharian Empire had kept a sentient being as a prisoner, and when they disappeared, they had simply left Kirithvan to waste away in the darkness. Marcus stepped closer to the cell, his engineer's mind already working on the problem. The chains were clearly some kind of energy-draining technology, designed specifically to contain something with the dragon's apparent power. But they were also old, and old technology could be defeated with the right approach. "The plasma cutters and molecular welders," Marcus said, understanding dawning. "You think they can break the chains?" Kirithvan's eyes brightened slightly. "Perhaps. The alloy is resistant to energy, but your human tools work on different principles than Zeltharian technology. There is hope." Marcus looked at the cell door. It was sealed with what appeared to be a time lock, another piece of Zeltharian cruelty. The dragon could see potential freedom just beyond the bars, but couldn't reach it. I brought the tools you requested, Marcus said, hefting his equipment pack. But I need to get this door open first. The dragon's expression shifted to something that might have been hope mixed with disbelief. You would help me? Even though you do not know what I am? What I might do once freed. Marcus met those alien eyes steadily. You've been trapped here for 50 years, and the first thing you did when you managed to call for help was ask for tools, not demand rescue. That tells me something about who you are. For the first time since Marcus had arrived, Kyrithvan's scales seemed to brighten slightly. Your species? They said humans were different. I begin to understand what they meant. Marcus was already examining the door's locking mechanism. Who said that? Who told you about humans? But before Kyrithvan could answer, Marcus's scanner began beeping urgently. Multiple contacts were approaching from the upper levels, moving fast and armed. Someone else had detected the beacon's activation, and they were coming. Marcus's blood ran cold as his scanner showed 12 armed figures descending rapidly through the facility's main shaft. Their energy signatures were wrong, too clean, too advanced for human technology. These weren't rescuers from the settlement. Kyrithvan, Marcus said urgently, his hands already working on the door's locking mechanism. Who else knows you're here? The dragon's violet eyes darkened. The Zeltharian remnants. They maintained monitoring stations on several worlds, hidden and automated. When I managed to activate the beacon, it likely triggered their security protocols. Marcus felt his stomach drop. The Zeltharian Empire was supposedly extinct, wiped out by some catastrophic event 50 years ago. But if there were remnants, survivors who had been watching their old facilities, they're coming to silence you, Marcus realized, to make sure no one learns what they did here. Kyrithvan's great head nodded grimly. Worse, they're coming to move me. This facility was meant to be temporary, but their empire collapsed before the transfer. If they take me now, the dragon's voice trailed off, but Marcus could see the terror in those ancient eyes. The door's locking mechanism was incredibly complex, designed to require multiple authorization codes and biometric scans. But Marcus had learned something about Zeltharian technology during his years working on their abandoned facilities. They had one crucial weakness. They relied entirely on their own energy signatures for security. They had never imagined someone would try to break their locks using purely mechanical bypass methods. Marcus pulled out a manual override tool, essentially a sophisticated crowbar designed for emergency situations. This is going to be loud, he warned. Better loud than too late, Kyrithvan replied. The sound of metal screaming against metal echoed through the corridor as Marcus forced the door's mechanism. Sparks flew as ancient circuits overloaded, and finally, with a deep grinding noise, the massive door began to slide open. The moment the gap was wide enough, Marcus squeezed through and approached the chained dragon. Up close, Kyrithvan was even more magnificent and more clearly suffering. The chains weren't just restraining the creature. They were covered in small energy nodes that pulsed with a sickly yellow light, constantly draining the dragon's life force. Tell me about these chains while I work, Marcus said, pulling out his plasma cutter. I need to understand how they function. Kyrithvan spoke quickly, urgency making the universal translator work overtime. They are soul drains designed to slowly extract what you might call life energy. But they also harvest memories, knowledge, abilities. The Zeltharians were not just imprisoning me, they were copying everything I am. Marcus felt sick. This wasn't just imprisonment. It was a form of gradual murder and theft that lasted decades. He began cutting at the first chain around Kyrithvan's front leg, the plasma cutter's beam meeting unexpected resistance from the alien alloy. They copied your memories? Marcus asked, adjusting the cutter's frequency. 50 years of extraction, Kyrithvan confirmed. My knowledge of stellar navigation, of worlds beyond your current reach, of technologies that could advance your species by centuries. All stolen. The first chain snapped, and immediately Marcus could see a change in the dragon's scales. They brightened noticeably, and Kyrithvan drew a deeper breath than Marcus had yet heard. That's better, the dragon said, and Marcus could hear renewed strength in the alien voice. But we must hurry. The Zeltharians know that freeing me means their crimes will be exposed. They will not hesitate to destroy this entire facility to prevent that. Marcus moved to the second chain, this one wrapped around Kyrithvan's neck. It was thicker and had more energy nodes. What crimes? What did they do to your people? Kyrithvan's eyes filled with something beyond pain. It was rage, carefully controlled but burning bright. The Draconic Ascendancy was not their enemy. We were explorers, philosophers, keepers of knowledge. We offered them partnership among the stars. Instead, they chose conquest. The second chain proved more difficult, the alloy seemingly adapting to the plasma cutter's frequency. Marcus switched to the molecular welder, using it in reverse to break down the chain's molecular bonds. They didn't just imprison you, Marcus realized as he worked. They hunted your entire species. Systematically, Kyrithvin confirmed. They captured us not for elimination, but for harvesting. Each of my people contained thousands of years of accumulated knowledge. The Zeltharians built their empire on stolen draconic wisdom. The second chain shattered, and this time the effect was dramatic. Kyrithvin's scales now glowed with their natural luminescence, and Marcus could feel a subtle change in the air, a sense of power barely contained. Marcus's scanner chimed again. The armed figures had reached sub-level 5 and were moving faster now. How many more chains? 3, Kyrithvin said, then added something that made Marcus pause. But human Marcus Chen, you should know. Freeing me means you become part of this conflict. The Zeltharians will not forgive your interference. Marcus looked up from his work on the third chain. How do you know my full name? I never told you. Kyrithvin's expression grew complex. Because 50 years ago, before my capture, I met another human. He spoke of his species with great pride, told me that humans were different from the other races the Zeltharians had conquered. He said humans would never abandon someone in need, no matter the cost to themselves. The third chain snapped under the molecular welder's assault. Who was he? Captain James Chen of the exploration vessel Pioneer's Dream. He was your grandfather, Marcus. And he died trying to warn Earth about the Zeltharian expansion. Marcus nearly dropped his tools. His grandfather had disappeared during a deep space exploration mission when Marcus was a child. The official report said his ship had been lost to a navigation error, but the family had always suspected there was more to the story. He's dead? Marcus asked quietly. He died a hero, Kyrithvin said gently, but his warning reached Earth. Your government redirected their expansion efforts, avoided Zeltharian space until after the Empire's collapse. Your grandfather saved billions of human lives. The fourth chain broke, and now Kyrithvin was beginning to stir, stretching limbs that had been bound for 50 years. The dragon's movements were still careful, weakened by decades of imprisonment, but there was an unmistakable grace and power in them. Marcus began work on the final chain, wrapped around Kyrithvin's tail. This one was the most complex, covered in nodes that pulsed more rapidly as he approached with his tools. Marcus, Kyrithvin said urgently, this last chain is different. It's not just draining me. It's a dead man's switch. If it detects my complete freedom, it will transmit our location to every Zeltharian facility in this sector. Marcus's hands stilled. How many facilities are we talking about? Unknown, but enough to overwhelm your settlement, your world if necessary. They will not let me live to testify about their war crimes. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the corridor outside. The Zeltharian forces had reached their level. Marcus looked at the final chain, then at Kyrithvin's expectant face. When this chain breaks, how long before they arrive? Hours, perhaps less. Marcus smiled grimly and activated both the plasma cutter and molecular welder simultaneously. Then we'd better be ready for them. The final chain exploded in a shower of sparks and twisted metal as Marcus's tools finally overwhelmed its ancient defenses. Immediately, every light in the facility flickered, and a deep harmonic vibration seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Kyrithvin rose to his full height for the first time in 5 decades, and Marcus finally understood what the Zeltharians had been so desperate to contain. The dragon was magnificent. His white scales now blazed with their natural inner light, creating shifting patterns of luminescence across his form. But more than that, Marcus could feel something else, a presence, vast and ancient and utterly alien, yet somehow benevolent. This was no mere creature. This was a being of immense intelligence and power. By the void came a shocked voice from the corridor entrance. The beast is free. Marcus spun to see 12 figures in advanced combat armor flowing into the cell block. Their technology was sleek and deadly, clearly beyond current human capabilities. But their leader, a tall figure whose armor bore insignia Marcus didn't recognize, removed her helmet to reveal a face that was almost human, except for the silver eyes and the faint scales along her jawline. Zeltharian survivors, Kirithavan said, his voice now carrying harmonics that made the air itself seem to sing. I should have expected Commandant Veltar to still draw breath. You always were too stubborn to die properly. The Zeltharian leader, Veltar, raised her weapon, a sleek energy rifle that hummed with barely contained power. Kirithavan of the 7th Constellation, by the authority of the Zeltharian Imperial Remnant, you are ordered to return to containment. Marcus stepped protectively in front of the dragon, though he knew his simple engineering suit offered no protection against their weapons.
He's been tortured for 50 years.
I won't let you take him back. Veltar's silver eyes fixed on Marcus with contempt. Human. You have no understanding of what you've unleashed. This creature is a weapon of mass destruction. We contained it for the safety of all civilized species. Liar! Kirithavan's voice boomed, and Marcus felt the floor vibrate beneath his feet. Tell him the truth, Veltar. Tell him why you really imprisoned us. The Zeltharian commander's expression flickered with what might have been old guilt, before hardening again. The draconic ascendancy possessed knowledge that was too dangerous for any single species to control. We did what was necessary. You stole our knowledge and murdered my people for it, Kirithavan replied, and now Marcus could see energy beginning to build around the dragon's form, not threatening but clearly present. And when you realized that killing us destroyed the very wisdom you sought to claim, you decided to farm us instead. Marcus felt pieces of a horrific puzzle clicking into place. The soul drain chains. You weren't just containing him. You were copying everything he knew. Veltar's soldiers shifted nervously as Kirithavan continued to grow brighter. The human understands quickly, the dragon said approvingly. Yes, Marcus. They chained my people in facilities across their empire, slowly stealing our memories, our abilities, our understanding of the universe. When they had extracted what they wanted, they simply discarded us. Enough, Veltar snapped. You will return to containment or we will be forced to use more permanent methods of stopping you. Kirithavan's laugh was like music played on crystal chimes. You will try. But tell me, Commandant, do you still remember the lesson of Kepler 78c? The color drained from Veltar's face and several of her soldiers took involuntary steps backward. Marcus didn't understand the reference, but he could see its effect on the Zeltharians. You wouldn't, Veltar whispered. The facility is full of civilians. Your precious human is here. I am not the monster you made me out to be, Kirithavan replied calmly, but I am also no longer the naive philosopher you captured 50 years ago. Your torment has taught me much about the necessity of violence. Marcus looked between them, trying to understand the undercurrent of fear he was sensing from the heavily armed soldiers. What happened on Kepler 78c? It was Veltar who answered, her voice tight with old terror. The last free dragon. We cornered him in a mining facility similar to this one. Rather than allow capture, he triggered a stellar cascade that destroyed the entire system. 16 billion Zeltharian lives, Kirithavan added quietly, and it broke something in us. After that, the few remaining dragons allowed themselves to be captured rather than risk such destruction again. Marcus stared at the magnificent creature beside him. You could destroy this entire star system? If necessary, Kirithavan confirmed. But I have learned from your grandfather's stories, Marcus. Humans believe in better solutions. Show me that his faith was justified. The challenge hung in the air like a physical thing. Marcus was an engineer, not a soldier or diplomat. But looking at Veltar's forces and thinking about 50 years of torture inflicted on a sentient being, he knew what his grandfather would have done. Marcus activated his personal communicator, broadcasting on all frequencies. This is Chief Engineer Marcus Chen to all human vessels in system. I am declaring a formal first contact situation under Galactic Accord Protocol 7. I am requesting immediate assistance, Veltar snarled. There are no human ships within range, fool. Marcus smiled. You're wrong. The mining platform Deep Reach has been converted to a long-range patrol vessel, and Captain Sarah Okafor never ignores a first contact alert. As if summoned by his words, every display screen in the facility flickered to life, showing the bridge of a human starship. A woman in a captain's uniform looked out at them with sharp, intelligent eyes. Marcus, this is Captain Okafor. I'm reading multiple armed contacts in your location and some very interesting energy signatures. What's your situation? Captain, I've made contact with a survivor of the draconic ascendancy who has been held prisoner by Zeltharian remnants for 50 years. They're currently threatening to recapture him, and I am formally requesting assistance under the Protection of Sentient Beings Act. Veltar's eyes widened. She clearly hadn't expected humans to have laws specifically covering this situation. Captain Okafor's expression hardened. Understood, Marcus. He advised. I am deploying Marine units to your location. To the armed forces currently threatening Chief Engineer Chen. You are ordered to stand down immediately or face the consequences. Your Marines are 20 minutes away, Veltar said, though Marcus could hear uncertainty creeping into her voice. We can be gone with our prize long before then. Kirithvan's scales suddenly flared with brilliant light, and when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that made every piece of metal in the facility ring like a bell. You assume, Commandant, that I require rescue. But perhaps it is time you remembered why your empire truly fell. The temperature in the chamber began to rise, and Marcus realized that the dragon's patience was finally at an end. The air in the chamber crackled with energy as Kirithvan's scales blazed brighter. Marcus could feel the power radiating from the dragon, but it wasn't the wild, destructive force he'd expected. Instead, it felt controlled, purposeful, like a surgeon's blade rather than a sledgehammer. You want to know why your empire truly fell, Veltar? Kirithvan's voice carried harmonics that made the metal walls resonate. It wasn't plague or war or cosmic disaster as your propaganda claimed. It was justice. Veltar's weapon trembled in her hands. Impossible. The cascading stellar events were natural phenomena. Our scientists confirmed it. Kirithvan's laugh was terrible and beautiful. Your scientists were fools. Tell me, Commandant, how many systems experience these natural stellar cascades? How many happen to be major Zeltharian population centers? How many contained facilities where my people were being tortured? Marcus watched as the color drained from Veltar's face. Around her, the other Zeltharian soldiers were backing away, their weapons lowering as ancient fear overrode training. 47 systems, Veltar whispered. 47 stellar cascades in the span of 6 months. Precisely, Kirithvan confirmed. 47 dragon souls chose death over continued captivity, and in their dying they took their tormentors with them. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Your people. They destroyed themselves and took the entire Zeltharian Empire with them. Not destroyed, Kirithvan corrected gently. Liberated. When a dragon dies in sufficient anguish, their connection to stellar forces becomes unstable. We learned this terrible lesson on Kepler 78c. But my people, in their final hours, chose to weaponize that knowledge. The dragon's scales dimmed slightly, and when he spoke again, there was infinite sadness in his voice. They died so that no other sentient species would suffer as we had. They died so that the children of a dozen races could grow up free from Zeltharian oppression. You're lying, Veltar said, but her voice lacked conviction. Our empire was glorious. We brought order to chaos, civilization to primitive worlds. You brought slavery, Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. That's what my grandfather discovered, isn't it? Not just that the Zeltharians were expanding, but what they did to conquered species. Kirithvan nodded sadly. Your grandfather witnessed the capture of my clutch brother, Sirthak the Wise. James Chen was the only alien who tried to intervene. For that act of courage, they marked Earth for eventual conquest. On the communication screen, Captain Okafor's expression was grim. Marcus, I'm reading massive energy buildup in your location. What's happening down there? Before Marcus could answer, Kirithvan spoke directly to the screen. Captain Sarah Okafor of humanity, I greet you. I am Kirithvan, last survivor of the Draconic Ascendancy. Your people's reputation for courage precedes you. Okafor's eyes widened. A dragon. By all the stars, Marcus found an actual dragon. A broken dragon, Kirithvan corrected. But perhaps not entirely destroyed. These Zeltharian remnants seek to return me to captivity. They believe they can rebuild their empire on stolen draconic knowledge. Veltar suddenly straightened, desperation making her bold. Listen to me, humans. You don't understand what you're protecting. This creature could destroy your entire world with a thought. We kept it contained for your safety. For 50 years you tortured him, Marcus said angrily, slowly stealing everything he was while he wasted away in chains. Don't you dare claim this was for anyone's safety but your own. Captain Okafor's voice cut through the tension. Kirithvan, what are your intentions if released? I need to know for my report. The dragon considered the question carefully. I wish to testify before the Galactic Council about Zeltharian war crimes. I wish to share the knowledge my people died protecting, freely given this time, not stolen. and I wish to find some way to honor the memory of those who died to end an empire of slaves." "He's lying," Veltar shouted. "Dragons are creatures of vengeance. If you free him, he'll destroy us all in retribution." Carithavan turned his massive head toward her, and for a moment his scales flared with something that might have been anger. "If I wished vengeance, Commandant, you would already be dead. Your forces, your hidden bases, your pathetic remnant of an empire, all of it could be ash within the hour." The temperature in the chamber spiked, and Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead despite his suit's climate control. "But," Carithavan continued, his voice growing calmer, "I have spent 50 years listening to the stories James Chen told me about humanity. He spoke of a species that chose mercy over vengeance, justice over retribution. His grandson has proven those words true." The dragon's gaze shifted to Marcus. "You freed me knowing I could be dangerous. You trusted in my nature rather than fearing my power. That is the courage your grandfather spoke of." Marcus felt a strange sense of destiny settling around him. "My grandfather always said that the measure of a civilization wasn't in its weapons or technology, but in how it treated those who couldn't defend themselves." "Wise words," Carithavan agreed. "And they guide my decision now." The dragon's scales suddenly shifted from white to a deep blue, and the energy in the chamber changed character entirely. Instead of the threatening buildup of moments before, Marcus now felt something that reminded him of scanning equipment. "What are you doing?" Veltar demanded. "Searching," Carithavan replied calmly. "In 50 years of imprisonment, I have had time to extend my awareness far beyond this facility. I know the location of every Zeltharian base, every hidden fleet, every remnant of your empire." The dragon's eyes fixed on Veltar with ancient authority. "I am giving you one opportunity, Commandant. Order your forces to stand down. Surrender your war criminals for trial and help us locate other imprisoned dragons who might still live. Do this and I will advocate for mercy at your trials." "And if we refuse?" Veltar asked. Carithavan's scales shifted to burning gold. "Then I will demonstrate why 47 dragon souls were sufficient to end an empire. But I will be precise this time. Only the guilty will suffer." Marcus watched as Veltar's soldiers looked at each other with growing panic. They were clearly veterans, but facing a creature that had helped destroy their entire civilization was beyond their training. "You have 30 seconds to decide," Carithavan announced. Veltar raised her weapon with shaking hands. "I'd rather die fighting than face Galactic Council justice." "Then you have chosen poorly," the dragon said sadly. But before anyone could move, alarms began blaring throughout the facility, and Captain Okafor's voice crackled through the communicators. "All units, be advised. I'm detecting multiple Zeltharian vessels dropping out of hyperspace. They're moving to surround the planet." The facility shook as massive ships passed overhead, their engines creating a deep thrumming that penetrated even the deepest levels. Marcus's scanner showed dozens of contacts in orbit, far more than a single human patrol vessel could handle. Veltar's expression shifted from fear to triumph. "Fleet Admiral Kexmoth received our signal. You're surrounded now, human. The beast will return to containment, and your planet will serve as an example to others who interfere with Zeltharian operations." Captain Okafor's voice crackled through the communicator, tension evident in her tone. "Marcus, I count 36 Zeltharian warships taking position around the planet. This is way beyond our capabilities. I'm calling for reinforcements, but they're hours away." Carithavan's scales had shifted to a deep crimson, and the temperature in the chamber was rising steadily. 36 ships. They brought their entire remaining fleet. The dragon's voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. "How fitting. All of my people's murderers gathered in one place." Marcus felt the floor vibrating beneath his feet as Carithavan's power continued to build. "Can you really destroy all of them?" "Easily," Carithavan confirmed. "But that would also destroy this planet, your ship, and everyone on the surface. The stellar forces required are indiscriminate." The dragon's great head turned toward the communication screen. "Captain Okafor, how many humans are currently on this world?" 12,000 in the main settlement," she replied immediately. "Plus another 3,000 in various mining operations. 15,000 innocent lives," Carithavan mused. "And yet, if I allow the Zeltharians to recapture me, they will use me to rebuild their empire. Millions of species across the galaxy will suffer." Veltar smiled coldly. "The beast faces the same choice my people did 50 years ago. Destroy innocence or submit to the greater good. Your greater good was slavery, Marcus snapped. Don't pretend there's any moral equivalence here. Suddenly, new alarms began sounding, and Captain Okafor's voice carried a note of amazement. By all the stars, Marcus, you need to see this. I'm patching through the orbital display. The screens in the chamber flickered and showed the space around Kepler 442b. The Zeltharian fleet had indeed surrounded the planet. Sleek, predatory ships that spoke of advanced technology and violent purpose. But they weren't alone. Emerging from hyperspace came ships unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. They moved with organic grace, their hulls seeming to flow like liquid metal. Some were clearly built for speed, others for power, and a few were so massive they dwarfed even the largest Zeltharian dreadnoughts. Impossible, Veltar breathed. Those are council ships. The Galactic Council doesn't have a fleet. Kirithvin's scales brightened to brilliant white. They do now. Tell me, Commandant, did you really think humanity was the only species monitoring Zeltharian remnant activities? A new voice cut through the communication channels, speaking in precise, authoritative tones. This is Admiral Teshavar of the Combined Galactic Defense Force to all vessels in the Kepler 442 system. You are ordered to stand down immediately and prepare for inspection. On the display, Marcus could see the newcomers vastly outnumbered the Zeltharian ships. Where the Zeltharians had brought 36 vessels, the combined fleet numbered in the hundreds. Admiral Teshavar, Captain Okafor responded. This is Captain Sarah Okafor of the human vessel Deep Reach. We have a first contact situation on the planet's surface and are currently protecting a refugee from illegal imprisonment. Confirmed, Captain Okafor. We are aware of the situation. Kirithvin of the 7th constellation, can you hear this transmission? Kirithvin lifted his great head toward the communication array. I hear you, Admiral. It has been many years since we spoke. Indeed it has, old friend. The Council formally recognizes your testimony regarding Zeltharian war crimes. We have arrest warrants for all surviving Zeltharian military personnel involved in the draconic genocide. Veltar's weapon clattered to the floor as the full implications hit her. You knew. The whole time you knew we were still active. Of course we knew, Admiral Teshavar replied. Did you think you could hide your crimes forever? Every species you enslaved, every world you conquered, every innocent you murdered. It's all been documented. We've been waiting for this moment for 50 years. Marcus felt pieces clicking into place. This was all planned. You knew the beacon would draw them here. Kirithvin's expression was complex, not planned exactly, but hoped for. I have been sending messages through quantum entanglement for decades, whenever my captor's defenses weakened. The Council has been searching for Zeltharian survivors, and when my beacon activated, it provided the perfect opportunity. On the display, the Zeltharian ships were beginning to move, but the combined fleet had them completely surrounded. Several of the alien vessels were already powering down their weapons. Fleet Admiral Kexmoth, Admiral Teshavar's voice carried across the system. You are ordered to surrender your fleet for inspection. Any attempt to flee or resist will be met with overwhelming force. The response came in a voice thick with desperation. Admiral Teshavar, the Galactic Council has no authority over Zeltharian space. We claim sovereign immunity. There is no Zeltharian space, another voice cut in, this one carrying the authority of absolute power. The Zeltharian Empire was dissolved by the Council 50 years ago, following revelations of systematic genocide and slavery. All former Zeltharian territory is now under Council protection. Marcus recognized the voice from news broadcasts. High Chancellor Morden of the Galactic Council, speaking from the Council chambers light years away. Furthermore, the Chancellor continued, any Zeltharian military personnel found to be involved in post-dissolution criminal activities will be tried for war crimes under universal law. Veltar slumped against the wall, her soldiers following suit. The fight had gone out of them completely. 50 years, she whispered. 50 years of hiding, planning, hoping to rebuild. All for nothing. Not for nothing, Kirithvin said quietly. You gave the galaxy time to prepare for justice. Time for species like humanity to join the Council and add their voices to those demanding accountability. The dragon's scales had returned to their natural white luminescence, and the oppressive energy in the chamber was dissipating. Marcus, your people's willingness to help a stranger has triggered something far greater than either of us imagined. Captain Okafor's voice carried a note of wonder. Marcus, I'm receiving priority communications from Earth. The president wants to speak with you personally. Something about humanity's formal acceptance into the Galactic Council. Marcus stared at Carithvan in amazement. This is really happening. First contact joining the council. All of it. Your grandfather would be proud, Carithvan said gently. He always believed humanity was ready for the larger galaxy. Today you've proven him right. But their moment of triumph was interrupted by a new alarm. On the display, one of the Zeltharian ships, a small, fast courier vessel, had broken from the fleet and was making a desperate run for hyperspace. All units, intercept that courier, Admiral Teshavar ordered. It cannot be allowed to escape. But the ship was fast and it had gotten a head start. It looked like it might actually make it to the hyperspace threshold. Until Carithvan spoke. I think not, the dragon said calmly, and his scales flared with golden light. The fleeing Zeltharian courier ship suddenly lurched to a stop just short of the hyperspace threshold, as if caught by an invisible hand. On the orbital display, energy readings spiked around the vessel, and Marcus realized he was witnessing something unprecedented, a demonstration of true draconic power used with surgical precision. Carithvan's scales pulsed with controlled golden light as he maintained his focus on the distant ship. Stellar gravitics, he explained to Marcus without taking his attention from his task. I'm creating a localized gravity well around their ship. They cannot escape without destroying themselves in the attempt. By the void, Admiral Teshavar's voice carried admiration across the communication channels. Carithvan, your people's mastery of cosmic forces remains unparalleled. The courier is secured. The dragon's scales dimmed as he released his hold on the distant ship. That vessel likely contains the locations of other hidden facilities, perhaps even other survivors. It was important that it not escape. Veltar, still slumped against the wall, looked up with hollow eyes. You don't understand what you've done. Some secrets are kept for good reasons. There are things in our hidden facilities that should never see the light of day. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of things? Before Veltar could answer, Carithvan's expression darkened. She speaks of the failed experiments. When the Zeltharians realized they couldn't simply steal our abilities wholesale, they began trying to create artificial dragons, hybrid creatures with fragments of our power but none of our wisdom or restraint. The aberrants, Veltar whispered, dozens of them locked away in stasis. If the Council finds those facilities, then the Council will deal with them appropriately, Admiral Teshavar interrupted. That is why we exist, to handle threats too dangerous for individual worlds to manage. Captain Okafor's voice carried excitement. Marcus, I'm getting word from the combined fleet. They want to establish a temporary headquarters on the planet's surface. You're being asked to serve as the human liaison for the operation. Marcus looked at Carithvan, who nodded encouragingly. I'm honored, but I'm just an engineer. Shouldn't this be handled by diplomats? You freed me, Carithvan said simply. You chose compassion over caution, justice over convenience. Those qualities matter more than diplomatic training in the trials to come. The dragon's great head turned toward the communication screen. Admiral Teshavar, with your permission, I would like to accompany the human liaison to the surface. There are things the Council needs to know that only I can explain. Granted, Carithvan. Your testimony will be crucial for the trials ahead. As if to punctuate the moment, the facility's lights flickered and then stabilized, as power systems came fully online for the first time in decades. The oppressive atmosphere of the prison levels was already lifting, replaced by something that felt like hope. Marcus began gathering his tools, then paused. Carithvan, what happens now? I mean, after the trials, after justice is served? The dragon was quiet for a long moment, his violet eyes distant. I am the last of my kind, Marcus. My people died to ensure freedom for others, but in doing so, they ended our line forever. I carry the accumulated knowledge of the draconic ascendancy, but I am alone. Marcus felt the weight of that solitude and couldn't imagine bearing it. I'm sorry, I can't even comprehend that level of loss. Perhaps that is why your grandfather's stories meant so much to me, Carithvan said gently. He spoke of a species that fought not for glory or conquest, but for each other. That found family not just in blood, but in shared purpose and mutual care. The dragon's scales brightened slightly. I may be the last dragon, but perhaps I need not be alone. Before Marcus could ask what he meant, new voices filled the chamber as Admiral Teshavar's security teams finally reached their level. The Marines who entered were clearly from multiple species. The combined fleet was truly that, a mixture of different races working together. The team leader, a tall being with blue-scaled skin and 4 arms, approached respectfully. Kirithavan of the 7th Constellation, I am Commander Zeftos of the Aquarian Defense Corps. It is an honor to meet you. And you, Commander, are these the ones who will escort our prisoners to trial? Among other duties, yes. But first, we need to secure this facility and document everything we find. The evidence here will be crucial for the prosecutions. Marcus watched as the Zeltharian soldiers were efficiently disarmed and restrained. Veltar offered no resistance, seeming broken by the knowledge that her empire's crimes were finally catching up with them. As she was led away, she turned back to Marcus. Human, you think you've won something here, but you have no idea what forces you've set in motion. The galaxy is not as peaceful as the Council pretends. Commander Zeftos gestured for the guards to continue moving the prisoners. Empty threats from war criminals are nothing new, he told Marcus. Don't let her words trouble you. But Kirithavan's expression was thoughtful. Perhaps not entirely empty. The Zeltharians were not the only aggressive species in the galaxy. With their empire gone, others have expanded to fill the void. That's a problem for another day, Admiral Teshavar's voice interjected through the communicators. For now, we celebrate justice served and new alliances forged. The Dragon and Marcus made their way through the facility toward the surface, accompanied by the multinational security team. As they traveled, Kirithavan shared stories of his people, their philosophy, their scientific achievements, their tragic end. Marcus found himself thinking of his grandfather, wondering what James Chen would have thought of this moment. When they finally emerged into the daylight of Kepler 442b, Marcus had to shield his eyes against the sun. He had been underground for hours, and the sight of the sky filled with ships from a dozen different worlds was overwhelming. Kirithavan spread his wings for the first time in 50 years, stretching muscles that had been cramped in that cell for half a century. Even weakened by his captivity, his wingspan was enormous, and his white scales caught the sunlight like captured starfire. It's beautiful, Marcus said, watching the dragon's obvious joy at being free. Freedom always is, Kirithavan agreed, but it's more beautiful when shared. Captain Okafor's shuttle touched down nearby, and Marcus could see her approaching with a mixed group of human officials and alien dignitaries. The real work was just beginning. Trials to organize, evidence to gather, relationships to build between species that had been isolated from each other for decades. But for just a moment, Marcus allowed himself to appreciate what they had accomplished. A tortured prisoner was free, war criminals would face justice, and humanity had taken its first real step onto the galactic stage. His grandfather would indeed be proud. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Galactic Justice Center orbiting Earth, watching as the last of the Zeltharian war criminals was transported to the secure facility below. The trials had been thorough and fair, with testimony from hundreds of species that had suffered under the fallen empire. Kirithavan's evidence had been the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. Lost in thought, the familiar harmonic voice made Marcus turn, though he no longer startled at the dragon's approach. Kirithavan had recovered remarkably well from his imprisonment, his scales now blazing with their natural luminescence and his movements graceful and powerful. Just thinking about how much has changed, Marcus replied. 6 months ago I was a mining engineer. Now I'm humanity's first enological consultant. Kirithavan settled beside him, his massive form somehow managing to seem companionable rather than overwhelming. Change is the nature of growth. Your species has adapted to galactic society faster than any in recorded history. Through the transparent aluminum of the observation deck, they could see Earth below, its surface now dotted with alien embassy complexes and joint research facilities. The integration hadn't been without challenges, but humanity's natural curiosity and adaptability had served them well. I received word from the expedition to the Zeltharian research stations, Kirithavan said quietly. They found 17 more of my people. Marcus felt his heart leap. Alive? In stasis, yes, but... The dragon's expression grew complex. 50 years of experimentation, Marcus. They are alive but changed. The Zeltharians tried to enhance our abilities while removing our independence. The survivors are powerful but damaged. Marcus felt a familiar anger rising at the thought of what the Zeltharians had done. Can they be helped? Perhaps. The Council's best xenopsychologists are working with them, and some show signs of recovery, but they will never be what they once were. Kirithvan's scales dimmed slightly. In trying to create perfect servants, the Zeltharians created something new. Dragons with power, but without the wisdom to control it safely. The aberrants that Veltar mentioned? Some of them, yes. Others were my people, altered beyond recognition. Kirithvan was quiet for a moment. But there is hope. The youngest of the survivors, those taken as eggs and raised in captivity, show the most potential for recovery. With time and care, they might become true dragons again. Marcus watched a shuttle launch from the planet below, carrying another group of alien diplomats to the orbital conferences. And what about you? You're not really the last anymore. Kirithvan's laugh was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. No, I am not. But I am perhaps the first of something new, a dragon who has learned that family is not only about blood and species, but about choice and shared purpose. The dragon's great head turned toward Marcus. Your grandfather spoke often of human families, how they adopted strangers and made them kin through love rather than birth. I find myself understanding that concept more each day. Marcus felt warmth spreading through his chest. Over the past months, he and Kirithvan had worked closely together, translating draconic knowledge for human understanding and helping the recovered dragons adjust to freedom. They had become friends, but Marcus was beginning to suspect it was more than that. The Council has made me an offer, Kirithvan continued. They want me to establish a new draconic academy, a place where the survivors can learn to be dragons again, and where other species can learn from us without the fear and exploitation of the past. That sounds perfect for you, Marcus said, though he felt a pang at the thought of his friend leaving. It would be if I were doing it alone, but I was hoping... Kirithvan's normally confident voice carried an unusual note of uncertainty. I was hoping you might consider joining me. As co-director, perhaps. Your people's perspectives on freedom and dignity have been invaluable in helping the survivors recover. Marcus stared at his friend in amazement. You want me to help run a school for dragons? I want you to help me build something new, Kirithvan corrected. A place where knowledge is shared freely, where different species learn from each other as equals. A place that embodies the best ideals of both our peoples. Before Marcus could respond, Captain Okafor's voice came through the communication system. Marcus, Kirithvan, you're needed in Conference Room 7. The Council has reached a decision about the remaining Zeltharian territories. They made their way through the station's corridors, passing beings from dozens of different species. The Galactic Justice Center had become more than just a courthouse. It was a symbol of cooperation and shared justice that Marcus was proud to be part of. In the conference room, Admiral Teshavar and High Chancellor Morden waited with serious expressions. The holographic display showed a star map of former Zeltharian space, with various systems marked in different colors. Kirithvan, Marcus, the Chancellor began. We've completed our survey of Zeltharian facilities. The results are both encouraging and troubling. The display zoomed in on specific systems. We've recovered 43 more imprisoned beings from various species, including the dragons you already know about. All are being treated and rehabilitated. However, Admiral Teshavar continued, we've also discovered that the Zeltharians were not working alone. Several other species provided them with technology and resources in exchange for shared research into forced evolution and mind control. Marcus felt his stomach drop. How many other species? At least 6 that we can identify, the Chancellor replied. The hegemony of Korth, the Syndicate Worlds, the Crimson Fleet, all of them were complicit in Zeltharian research to varying degrees. Kirithvan's scales darkened. And they are still free, still active. Yes, which is why the Council is formally requesting that you and Marcus accept leadership of the new Draconic Academy. We need a place where we can train defenders of freedom, where we can prepare for the challenges ahead. Marcus looked at Kirithvan, seeing his own determination reflected in the dragon's violet eyes. We accept. Excellent, the Chancellor said with obvious relief. The Academy will be established on Sanctuary, the world the Council has set aside for recovered prisoners and refugees. You'll have access to the best resources we can provide. As the meeting concluded and officials began filing out, Marcus found himself alone with Kirithvan once again. Sanctuary, the dragon mused. An appropriate name for a new beginning. Are you ready for this? Marcus asked. Building something entirely new? Kirithman's scales brightened to their brilliant white. I have learned much about courage from your species, Marcus. Your grandfather taught me that sometimes the greatest act of bravery is choosing hope over despair. Building rather than destroying. The dragon's great head turned toward the observation windows, where Earth hung in the darkness like a blue jewel. 50 years ago, I thought I was the end of something ancient and beautiful. Today, I choose to be the beginning of something new and necessary. Marcus nodded, feeling a sense of destiny settling around him. Then let's build something worthy of the people we've lost and the future we're fighting for. Outside the station, the ships of the combined fleet maintained their vigilant patrol. The galaxy was not yet safe. There were still enemies to face, still injustices to correct. But for the first time in decades, there was also real hope. In the depths of space, new alliances were forming, and at their heart was a simple truth that humanity had always known. Freedom was worth fighting for, and no one should face that fight alone. The last dragon was no longer alone, and the galaxy was better for it.